Rather, hello everyone, I am PRIYASHANTHA from University of RUHUNA, Sri Lanka. Today I am going to present you our concept paper on the theoretical perspective of egalitarian gender role attitudes and behaviors. Traditionally, men are believed to be breadwinners, while women are believed to be the caregivers. There has been a revolution in gender roles in which perceptions of gender role beliefs has been changed into egalitarian gender roles over the last 50 years. In egalitarian gender role attitudes, men and women hold attitudes that they should do the gender roles of the opposite sex while playing their traditional gender roles. Even the researchers use the social role theory to explain the traditional gender role attitudes. There is a question whether egalitarian gender role attitudes are addressed by the theory. As a social role theory postulates that gender role attitudes emerge from people's observations of men and women in their social roles, it is ideal for explaining the traditional gender role attitudes. For example, caring for children by the mother is supposed to be a trait of a mother. However, researchers argue that it can also explain the egalitarian gender role attitudes, as there are changes in traditional gender role attitudes would follow from the changes in social role distribution. For example, if a female entered into a managerial job, she needs to demonstrate the typical behavioral traits of the manager's job. Then people start believing that the characteristics displayed in the managerial job are common to the person who showed them, even though she's a female. However, researchers argue that the explanations offered by the theory are not highly specific or detailed about the step-by-step cognitive processes of people involved in egalitarian gender role attitudes and behaviors. Therefore, to fill that gap, we provide the theory of planned behavior to explain the egalitarian gender role attitudes. The theory of planned behavior is a prominent theory to predict the human behavior. It presumes that a person's particular behavior is based on that person's intentions regarding that behavior, which is a function of attitude toward the behavior, subjective norm of the behavior, and perception of control over the behavior. So as the methodology, we position this article as a concept paper, and by reviewing the literature, we provide two perspectives in the paper. As you can see, these are the two perspectives. Perspective number one, attitude, subjective norms, and perceived behavioral control influence the intentions for changing gender role behaviors. The attitude represents the feelings, values, or beliefs about the consequence of a specific behavior. When people have positive feelings, values, or beliefs on a particular behavior, they have intentions for that behavior. Comply with this argument, as the name implies, gender role attitudes are gender role beliefs of people, which represents the term attitude. Men are believed to be the breadwinners of the family as they possess the traits such as assertiveness, independent, rational, competitive, and decisive. While, on the other hand, women are believed to be the caregivers of the family since they have traits like showing concern for others, warmth, helpfulness, and the nurturance. However, this attitude has been transformed into more egalitarian gender role attitudes where people think it doesn't matter when both men and women play the breadwinner and caretaker roles while performing their traditional roles. For example, in Sri Lanka, we have 59% of females in income generating activities. On the other hand, in 72% of men's employment participation, more men, nearly 59% participate in housework and care work activities. These figures may be due to the people's attitudinal changes. However, even statistics prove those attitudinal changes. No empirical studies on egalitarian gender role attitudes impact egalitarian gender role behaviors. Therefore, this provides a direction for the future researchers. The subjective norm of the theory of planned behavior refers to the people's behavioral intention in a certain way based on the expectations of others. As parents influence children's socialization to gender roles, parental gender expectations provide a model for children's gender role attitudes. For example, children of working parents have more intentions to demonstrate the same behavior as their mothers and fathers did. Moreover, society at large expects egalitarian gender attitudes in most of the countries. Nowadays, a female child in Sri Lanka is given high priority by investing the parents' limited resources for her education rather than saved for the dowry and prepared for the future as male counterparts by their parents. This norm is further reflected by higher female student population in schools, high rate of female enrollment in public universities, and higher female representation in professionals in Sri Lanka. This information provides sufficient evidence that the others highly expect females' behavior in employment and income generating activities. As females' economic activity participation is a leading cause for egalitarian gender role attitudes, the intentions for egalitarian gender role attitudes of both men and women in Sri Lanka are then likely. However, there is limited empirical evidence in Sri Lankan context, also in the Western context, to prove the impact of subjective norm on intentions for egalitarian gender roles. Therefore, this also provides a direction for the future researchers. The third component of the theory of planned behavior is the perceived behavioral control, which consists of two parts as internal and external. The internal behavioral control refers to the abilities and the capacities to perform the behavior. In the theory of planned behavior, the intentions of the behavior is supported by abilities and the capacities. Many sociologists say that more and more women are now taking over the jobs traditionally held by men, since they are educated, confident, self-resilient, and skilled. To confirm this idea, Sri Lankan females have higher performance at public examinations and higher enrollment rate for universities and non-vocational tertiary education than males, have resulted in the highest rate of females in professionals in Sri Lanka. In addition to that, medical advancements like contraceptive pills have helped females delay the child-making possibilities, and it is evident from the declining fertility rates during the last 40 years in Sri Lanka. The external behavioral control refers to the facilitative conditions or resources available to demonstrate the behavioral intentions for the behavior. There are various examples in Sri Lanka for the conducive conditions in which females' economic activity participation. Here you can see some of them. This information provides sufficient evidence that both internal and external behavioral control causes for intentions for egalitarian gender role attitudes of people in Sri Lanka. However, there is limited empirical evidence in Sri Lanka and Western context relating to this as well. Therefore, this also provides a direction for the future researchers. Perspective number 2, intentions and facilitative conditions for changing gender role behaviors influence the changing gender role behaviors. This perspective covers the argument that the behavior is a function of intention and the facilitative conditions of the theory of planned behavior. Sri Lanka has a high gender gap in employment participation rate. That gender gap precisely has derived from the low female employment participation rate. We know that the real cause for egalitarian gender role attitude is the female employment participation rate. Then, is it reasonable to predict the egalitarian gender role behaviors of people in Sri Lanka with such a low percentage of female employment participation? The answer is yes, due to 3 reasons. Reason number 1, because as noted in perspective 1, there is enough evidence to prove that people have intentions for egalitarian gender role attitudes. Reason number 2, in Sri Lanka, we have enough facilitative conditions for internal capacity development for doing the jobs and income generating activities, which were also highlighted in detail in the perspective 1. Reason number 3, even the females' employment participation is quite low. In the formal sector, nearly we have 59% involving in income generating activities. Also, Sri Lanka has a high rate of males participating in household care activities, indicating that most men have changed their traditional gender role behaviors. Based on these 3 reasons, we can infer that Sri Lanka has people, at least to some extent, who have changed their traditional gender role attitudes and behaviors. However, that has not been tested empirically, and this provides a direction for the future researchers. Conclusion. With Sri Lankan examples, we found that Sri Lanka is a place where people have egalitarian gender role attitudes, and the theory of planned behavior is a good predictor for egalitarian gender roles. However, the ideas highlighted in 2 perspectives have not been tested empirically. Therefore, this article provides the implications for the future researchers. Thank you.